You know, every year I think of Christmas. I can tell you where I was, what I was, when Dad would pull that little stunt on me. And come to find out, I think his dad had done the same thing.
So when you think of Christmas, you think of premeditated murder.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Law Lite, brought to you by Foreman Watson Holtree. It's Christmas time in Hollis, Queens. Mom's cooking chicken and collard greens, rice and stuffing macaroni and cheese, Santa putting gifts under Christmas trees.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, you've never heard that? That's Run DMC, PJ.
It's been years.
Yes.
I actually just heard, have you heard it came out last year, but it's the Lil Jon Kool-Aid Man Christmas. Oh my gosh. That made my year when I saw it.
Yes. Hey, everybody is merry and bright. A few days away from the big day, and we are here recording Law Lite.
Yes, we are.
Our Christmas episode.
You
ready for Christmas? You got your Christmas done?
Yeah, I started a little bit early, which I almost never do.
Right.
And we're good to go.
Awesome, man. Well,
how about
you? I'm down to helping Santa with some stocking stuffers.
Gotcha.
And then probably a couple other minor gifts. But Missy did a whole lot of work on online shopping, and so we've had packages at the door every day.
Online makes it so much easier.
Changed the ballgame,
it really has.
It really
the landscape is completely different now.
It has. But it's an exciting time of year. For some, it's very difficult because they think about the loved ones that aren't with them this holiday, or they've come through a relational breakup of some type that's difficult this time of year. We can feel lonely, but
we're off to a happy start.
Yeah, for many, for most, hopefully, Christmas is a time of hope, and it's time for family, and for many. Many of us, and including myself, it's a time for us to reflect upon our religious beliefs and to give thanks for our relationship with Christ. But one of the things that I thought would be interesting, PJ, is, we only get one chance to do a Christmas podcast each year.
Yes.
And this is our first because, we're relatively new at all this here with Law Lite. And I thought while we were sitting here at, the old 530 Frederica Street in our high-rise white tower, that we could share a few Christmas stories. And I'll share a little bit today about some of the things I've learned doing, personal injury work, how Christmas time changes the landscape a little, and just shoot a few things across and kind of keep it light and merry and bright. What do you think?
Sounds festive.
So, I did tell you that in anticipation for today, I may ask you, hey, do you have a favorite Christmas story or memory as a kid growing up, or something that you just, every year you can't make it through Christmas without thinking of this one Christmas memory or anything like that?
Unfortunately, I am agnostic, so I don't have that solid faith, and we've had this discussion before. But so typically for me, Christmas was more. Growing up was always a more of a materialistic thing,
right?
Which can be good and can be bad. So a lot of my Christmas memories deal with specific toys I got. Like one year I got all the original Ghostbusters toys, which I'm super excited, or I was super excited about, still am. I'm a big Ghostbusters fan. The new trailer for the new movie just recently dropped, and
I know, I saw that.
Yeah, it was, I pretty much cried when I saw it because I'm a little baby. There's a lot of nostalgia there for me. I grew up on Ghostbusters, but there's one year I got a Jaminator. I don't know if you're familiar with that toy.
Don't think I remember the Jaminator.
Yeah, it was a guitar that it pretty much you just pushed buttons and it did all the musical playing for you, but it was really slick and cool looking, and there were hundreds of musical notes, so you kind of felt like a rock star even though you sucked at actually playing. But I think for me, one of the things that kind of sticks out in recent memory is now before I tell you this, just so you don't think or any of the listeners out there think I'm a complete monster, I can remember when I first found out, spoiler alert, Santa was not real. And for me, I was 8. And honestly, next to probably my birthday, Christmas was my second favorite holiday. And so when I found out that he wasn't real, I was devastated, like legitimately devastated. And I can remember when I was told and like how much it affected me in the moment. It's stupid, but at the time it was like, how could they let me live this lie for so long, kind of a thing. And I always vowed that
what if he is real, PJ?
He could be. There is still some magic in the world, even though I'm a jaded adult now.
Yeah,
you never know. There's still some magic, right? But
for all those kids that are listening to this podcast, because there's a bunch of them that do.
Do they really?
Oh, absolutely. And
do we have a young demographic that I'm not aware of?
Just because PJ was told that there was no Santa,
that's true.
We
just in case
we can't be certain that PJ is correct about that, because just last Christmas he did come to my house, and I'm a believer.
Well,
but now you can finish with your story over there, PJ.
All right. So if you're 8 or younger,
and you get told
and
that,
you're listening to this podcast, stop listening for the next 5 minutes. So I can remember, vowing that I will never lie to my children like that, ever. Of course, that's not that, sometimes you got to, but about something like that, I was like, I'm going to be honest and just very, very straightforward with them. So jump to eventually when I did have a kid, Logan, when he was much younger. He's 15 now, but at the time he was, like 1 or 2. And my wife, with her religious beliefs, they don't celebrate Christmas. Of course, they do believe in Christ and the birth and all that stuff. They don't celebrate that holiday. For her, rather than telling our child that there's this jolly fat man in a red coat with a white beard coming down chimneys and everything, she's like, we should instead tell him about Jesus and God and all those characters, because those are far more important and real. So for her, it was teaching Logan about those individuals as opposed to someone who may or may not be fictional, depending on
Santa Claus.
Depending on what your age is, if you're listening right now. So so for me, it was always funny, because most people, when they talk to a kid, they automatically assume, well, it's a kid, they believe in Santa Claus. Very vividly, I can remember we were at the mall and we went to the Great American Cookie Factory,
right,
to get cookies.
Right there on the corner.
And Logan was he was about 2 or 3.
Right.
He was still stroller age.
Right.
I know some people keep their kids in strollers till they're like 10, but we weren't those parents. So he was still young enough to be in a stroller. And I can remember the woman was starting to hand Logan his cookie, and she says, so have you been able to tell Santa what you wanted for Christmas this year? And I kind of lean in and look at Logan and say, well, we all know that Santa's not real, don't we? And he's like, yeah, Santa's not real. And I turned and looked at this woman, and she had this look of horror and disbelief on her face, and she like pulled her hand back as if suddenly she didn't even want to give us the cookie anymore that we had already paid for at this point. So we still got the cookie, I'll tell you. But she was mortified at the fact
you had spoiled it for a 2 or 3-year-old.
Right.
Really?
I killed his childhood is how she had that look on her face. And at the time I thought it was hilarious. When I think back, though, ironically, she looked how I felt when I found out Santa may or may not have been real. So at the time, so we had instances like that where, people wanted to talk to Logan about Santa. The problem you run into, though, when you
is Logan telling.
Yeah, is when he's at school.
Right.
And then you have to have
notes back from the teacher that Logan is like needs to know not to tell people.
Right. And we've had to go through that twice now with Connor as well, where but we have to explain to him, we're like, look, just because you know or don't believe that Santa's real, however the case may be, is like you can't go around actively telling people
what may or may not be true.
Yeah, he's not real. Right. It's their parents' job to teach them in the way that their parents think that it's best
Right.
for their child. So, we have to tell them, like, don't go around saying that he's not real. That's not fair to those kids. But yeah, the woman at the Great American Cookie factory thought I was the devil.
You shattered her whole idea
I did.
of what is right parenting and wrong parenting.
I was the fruit of the devil.
Yes, that you were the villain.
I really was. But at the time, I thought it was kind of funny. And Trina hated when I did that, even though she was kind of, she was part of the problem.
Right.
But she hated when I would do that because of people's reactions at times.
That's funny. I probably would react the same way. I mean, like if I saw a little child and their dad goes, well, he knows we've told him there's no Santa. I would be like, am I being set up here? Like, yeah, well, you're wrong, pal. There is. Yeah. And, isn't that right? Like I'd probably play the part of trying to persuade your child that there really is and that you're out of your mind as their parent. But,
which probably happens at school. But on the flip side, just so everyone, doesn't think I'm totally an evil person, I have taught them to believe in Bigfoot, aliens, and Mothman.
See, I mean, you've done a great job.
Right.
So those things like Bigfoot and Godzilla.
And the Loch Ness Monster, there's still magic in the world.
Oh, man.
It's just not Santa Claus.
I have to tell you sometime about the Loch Ness Monster. I have gone fishing up in the area up in New York where people have claimed to have spotted the Loch Ness Monster. And
he's way far off from home.
Yeah. It's hilarious. I'll have to tell you that sometime. My uncle, he gets really upset with us when we raise the issue because people around there will start talking, and it's like you can't get them off the topic, So
what's the area that?
No, I apologize. It's not the Loch Ness Monster. It's Bigfoot. It's Bigfoot.
Oh, okay.
Up in the upstate New York. Yeah, it's not Loch Ness Monster. But anyway,
we're way off topic at this point.
So your favorite Christmas, one of your most is the day that you. Hey, all right, that's yours.
It takes all kinds.
Well, mine sort of is a little jaded as well.
Okay.
So when I, as a kid, believed wholeheartedly in Santa Claus, and my parents had not told me anything otherwise, each year my dad thought that it would be a good idea to take it upon himself to scare me about Santa. He would tell me that he was going to shoot Santa. He was going to or his reindeer out of the sky for target practice.
Right.
And so like we would be getting ready for me to go to bed on Christmas Eve, and Dad would get his shotgun out and say, "Oh, I've got my gun all shined up tonight, and the way I see it is if I hit old Rudolph, then the whole sleigh comes down. I'll probably get to Santa and ask him a few questions, and then we'll just see what I want to do with Santa. Ha, ha, ha." And I would go, "Oh, Mom, Dad is going to kill Santa Claus, and he's going to kill the reindeer." And I'd start crying, and my mom and dad would get into it. And my dad he'd be like, "Oh, I'm just joking with you." And then he'd wink at me like, "I'm saying this to keep your mom happy, but I'm not really joking. I'm going to kill Rudolph, and Santa's sleigh is going to come crashing to the ground." So then finally I'd go to bed, and the next year's Christmas would roll back around. And I remember for a few years, that was Dad's joke. He'd get the gun out, shine up. He slipped away last year. That stinking reindeer was so quick. But he goes, "I've been practicing, and I'm going to get him. I'm using bigger bullets and things like that, And, "Oh, Mom, Dad's going to kill Santa." He's not. He's just joking with you. And my dad would wink at me and go, "I'm not joking," like that. So it went like that for a couple years. And so finally, Dad, one year it was cooler, and I grew up in Florida, so a lot of times at Christmas time it wasn't that cold outside, but it was cool. And my dad had built a fire in the wood-burning stove because we heated our house with a wood-burning stove. Whenever we needed to heat it, we would just build, fires in the stove, and it would heat the house. And so it was cooler that evening, and my dad said, "I'm not going to have to get the gun out this year. I'm just going to keep the fire stoked, and when Santa comes down the chimney, he'll fall right into the belly of a great big fire." And so here I am. I'm thinking, I'm picturing Santa burning up and crying. My mom man, you need to stop that. You need to stop kidding with him, So,
I love your dad.
So my dad, every year. So every year now I call him and I'm like, are you on the lookout? You getting your gun out tonight? And so kind of play it up a little bit. But that's one of every year I think of Christmas. I can tell you where I was, what I was, when Dad would pull that little stunt on me. And come to find out, I think his dad had done the same thing.
So when you think of Christmas, you think of premeditated murder.
I think of crime, man. It's pretty bad. But yeah.
Yikes.
But
that story makes mine look really low key, actually.
Yeah. Beyond that, which is as a kid, I have some really good memories of going to some candlelight church services that were meaningful. One year, I took it upon myself to see how many different church services I could go to on Christmas Eve, and I went to all different faith denominations, all kinds of, and I saw everywhere from the high mass of a Catholic church to an evangelical worship rally types.
Oh wow!
I went to 4 or 5 different ones during the course of the day. So I remember that Christmas Eve because just to watch people, celebrate Christmas and through their faith belief.
I wonder how their family kills Santa Claus.
Yeah, right. That's what I thought. It's like I wonder which one of these dads is evil. So those have been good. And then of course, I always look forward to an opportunity to eat well and spend time with family and stuff. So, but that's my story as a kid. That's the one thing that resonates with me is my dad's precarious jokes of shooting down the sleigh and capturing Santa and I guess killing Santa Claus. But yeah,
I like that.
I figured you would like that one.
If we had taught our children about Santa and they believe
that's how you would have.
That's the direction I probably would have gone in, right?
Well, the next time my dad's here by the office visiting, I'll have to have him tell you all about it, and you can.
That is fun. We should have him on the podcast.
That's right. We'll put him on the podcast and let him tell the story from his vantage point as to why he thought that was
amazing.
Something I needed.
Yes.
So, this is Law Lite. We probably should kind of direct this back to a little bit of legal discussion. We do that in most of our podcasts, not all. But one thing, that is true, unfortunately, about that I've learned in representing people in bodily injury cases over the last 24 years is that during Christmas, a lot of times, people are more prone to resolving their cases for less than what I believe to be the reasonable value of them. I think that insurance industry knows that is a phenomenon, and I think that they come to people, especially if they've been putting up difficult defenses all through the case, and then all of a sudden they come up with, hey, well, we'll do this, and they know that at this time of year, people are strapped a lot of times for money, needing extra money.
Right.
They're feeling the pressures of wanting to provide for their family or for their significant others for Christmas. And so they know the tendency would be maybe to settle a case for less than the value than what it would be worth or should be worth. And, it's one thing we don't get into a whole lot we haven't on the podcast, is that every case has its own value,
Right.
And you've been a part of me, how I go through the valuation process on cases and look at them. But, every case with the facts that we have and the story we're able to tell or not tell, and the injuries, the pictures, the photos, the videos, everything we have to put together, ultimately we determine, well, what kind of value does this case have if it's presented to a jury? And then you kind of work from there as to what the person should settle their case for, resolve their case for, short of going to a trial. And like I said, this time of year, I have to a lot of times really work on my clients. Let's not be quick to resolve a case that, because it's Christmas time. And now on the other hand, I have seen cases that have been very difficult. That just because it is the end of the year coming up, I don't think it's necessarily Christmas, but it's that the books change into another year, and so a lot of insurance companies want a lot of those cases off their books if they can clear them so that they're not liabilities moving into the new year. And so sometimes this time of year you'll get you'll get more value out of a case than maybe you would have if you would have tried to resolve it in March or April, because they want to get it off their books. So, I do see both extremes. I see people that are just unreasonable about the value of their case. They'll take a far discounted rate to be done with it this time of year so that they have cash. But on the other hand, I have seen some people that have held out for a long time, and when it comes up to time to Christmas, the insurance company wanting to clear their books of as many cases as possible before the end of the year. So, you see both things.
Right.
And that's something that you kind of got to keep your eye out for on both fronts when you're the attorney responsible for these cases.
If you were to give a percentage of the amount that they lost, if I called you and I said, hey, I wanted to go ahead and settle my case and go ahead and just get the money now, that kind of a thing, would you say that they lose 20% less, 40% less than what they probably would have got otherwise? Or can you really determine that?
I don't know. I think that because all these cases are sometimes 5% in a big case is a whole lot of money.
You're right.
Versus 30% in a smaller case. Probably the worst I've seen is where I believe their value of their case is X, and they're willing to take Y, which is half the value of what I believe their case is worth. I've seen them do that around Christmas. And who am I? It's not my case. I haven't lived the injury. I haven't lived but it really is difficult for me to say, okay, well then if it's your case, I'll do what you want me to do.
Right.
And on the other hand, I have seen, I wouldn't say 50% increase, that would be a stretch, but I've seen 20 to 30% increase in the value of cases in the last month of the year, as I believe the insurance company is genuinely trying to just get it off their books, and so they're willing to pay a premium to get it off their books. So I've seen an increase of 20, probably the max 30% of an increase in what I thought the value of the case would be. But each one's different. The one thing that is interesting is that there are clients. There is a body of people who, when you say, well, you know what they're doing to you, they are flashing money in hopes that you will resolve this case because they think you need it for Christmas. And when you tell them that, they're like, well, I don't know who they think they're dealing with.
Right.
When you open their eyes, they're responsive to it. Some are, some aren't. But I have had those clients, well, they're crazy if they think, once you open their eyes to what, they think, oh, this is another reason I need an attorney, is because you're opening my eyes to their ploys.
Exactly.
So, but it's interesting. This time of year definitely has its hands on the outcome of cases. And so the longer you're in the profession, the more you see, you start to pick up on those trends, So
that is interesting.
It's interesting. We want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Yes.
We're thankful we've been able to get this podcast up and going. I know we have a few faithful listeners. I hear all the time that, from a handful of people that listen religiously, and hope that grows. That's the purpose of this, is to educate and to somewhat allow people some insight into the legal profession in a way that's not as boring or monotonous to them. But we want to wish our listeners a Merry Christmas and a joyous New Year. We're thankful for the opportunities that we get in the community, not just practicing law, but to make a difference. And PJ, I wish you a Merry Christmas and your family. And let's make it a great New Year. I think we have one more episode where we're going to do some reflection on the past year. And I'm looking forward to that, being able to share with the public some of the highlights of the year and some of the new people that have come on staff. We're going to have a few guests with us as a part of that podcast. So we got some great things planned. We appreciate everybody. This is Foreman Watson Holtry's Law Lite, brought to you by Foreman Watson Holtry, 530 Frederick Street. Check us out online at fwhlegal.com.